So we need now a way to actually update these posts that when we like it, we can tell that we've liked this post. So let's work on that next, and then we'll actually work on loading all of these and showing them at the start of our application. So let's go back to post. And now let's modify a few things so that we can actually update some stuff when the user likes the post. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to say void update like that. And then I'll simply call this dot update after we like the post. So then it will get all of the likes that we have, and it will call this method, which will hopefully update it for us. So inside of here, I'm going to call a method that we're going to create now in database. So inside of our database file, I'm going to make a method called update post. So I'm going to say void update post. This will simply take a post. And what this will do is it will say post dot underscore ID dot update like that. And is there a reason I can't reference underscore ID? Okay, so let's not do that then. Instead of doing that, let's take a post and let's take a database reference of ID. So now what we're saying is, okay, give us the post and give us the reference to the item, the database object here. And then we'll say ID dot, and in this case, it's just going to be update. And we can simply update with post dot to JSON. So this is like really basic, super simple. What I'm saying is, okay, let's take a post object, let's take the database reference that we already have, and then let's simply update it with the post.toJSON. Now we don't really need to make a method or a separate function inside of database to do this, but since I wanted to keep everything kind of contained, I will. And that means that now if we go back to post, what we need to do inside of here is call that update post. So we're going to say update post like that. For post, we're going to pass this because we're passing the current post. And for ID, we're going to pass this dot underscore ID like that. So that's all we need to do. We're giving the database reference, which is right here. And then we're going to pass the actual post object itself, which is this. We will automatically convert that to JSON from the database thing right here when we're calling .toJSON, and that should update the post for us. So let's actually have a look at this, if this is working or not. So let's refresh. And let's open up Firebase and let's get the app going at the same time. And let's go sign in with Google, choose my account. And now let's just go, hello, we need to make a new message here. You can see that gets added. And now when I like this, notice that every time I like it, this is highlighting in yellow. So we have one like on it, and now we have this user liked thing popping up, and it gives us the ID of the user that liked this. Now, if we have that and I unlike this, you can see that that disappears, it highlights in red, and it goes away. So that is kind of how Firebase works, and that's why I wanted to use this too, because it's super simple, super intuitive, and graphically it's like really easy to look at and make sure you're doing things properly. Okay, so now that's working, and all we need to do is actually load these messages at the beginning so that we can see all of the messages persistently, because obviously I have 4 messages right now, but we aren't seeing them. We need them to show up somewhere. All right, so now let's write the function that's actually going to return all of the messages that are loaded in our database. So I'm going to call this one get all messages. We're going to make this async like that. And then at the bottom here, I'm just going to have a return statement for a blank list, just because now I'm going to make this a future that's going to take a list of posts like that. So essentially what I'm saying is that since this is an asynchronous function, we have to wait for the database to be queried. We might have to wait for this to actually be finished. So we might not immediately get a result when we call this. So that's why we wrap the list that we're returning. It's going to have a bunch of posts in it with a future. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to say data snapshot, and then we're going to say data snapshot is equal to, and this is going to be database reference dot child. Inside of here, we want the child to be posts. That's what we want to reference. And then we're going to say dot once like that. So what is the error here? We need to put an await before this. So like that. So since this is an asynchronous call as well, we will await it, which means just wait for this to finish essentially. Okay, so now that we have data snapshot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say list post. We're going to call this post equals a blank list, and this will be the list that we populate with the posts. Now remember that all of this data here inside of our Firebase data store, or whatever you want to call it, real-time database, is not actually a post object. It is simply kind of like a JSON object. It's a map or a dictionary, right? So we need to now take that and translate this into a proper post object that we can then actually return in the list. So first thing we're going to do is just say if, and this would be data snapshot dot value does not equal null. Then what we will do is we will actually grab all of the values that are in this data snapshot, convert them into post objects, and add them to the list. So we're going to say data snapshot dot value, because it's not null, which means we actually found something there, dot for each, like that. And inside of here, we're going to make an arrow function. We're going to say key, comma, value, and then we will do whatever's inside of this function body. So what I'm saying essentially is that since this is a list, this value, for every single value in the list, they're going to have a key and they're going to have a value. And then what we will do is we'll use that key and that value to actually translate this into an object and add that to the post list. So the first thing I'm going to do is say post equals. I'm going to write this here and we'll fill this in later, but I'm going to say create post, which is a function we're going to write that will actually create a new post given a value. So we'll have a look at these. Actually, we might have a look at these after, but essentially what this kind of looks like is you have a key. The key is whatever that unique ID is. So actually, let me just go to Firebase and I can walk us through it. So this right here is the key. Like this kind of, let's zoom in. This thing that I'm highlighting is the key. And then the value is actually the author and the body. So the value will store another key, which will be author, and another key, which will be body. And the value of that key will be, Tim, and the value of body will be hello. So it's kind of like a nested statement thing. So when I'm saying value, what I'm doing is I'm actually grabbing just the information associated with this key, which is actually the data that we want. So create post obviously doesn't exist yet. So we'll have to make that function, but we'll leave that there for now. Now, once we get that post, we're going to say post.setID. And I think setID is the name of it. Did we have setID? Yep, setID, that's what it is. And we're simply going to set the ID as the value. Now, the reason for that is because the value is the ID, right? Or sorry, not the value. What am I saying? That's going to be the key as the key, because that key again is this right here, which is the ID that we want. But we need to turn this into a database reference because we don't want to just pass the key. If we do that, then we're just getting a string. We need to turn that into a reference. So what we can say is database reference dot child, so not slash, sorry, dot child, and then we're going to say post slash plus key. So essentially we want to reference the key that is in this post field, right? So we'll just concatenate those two strings together. Okay, so then we have that. And finally, we'll say post.add and we'll add post. And that's the list that we have up here. And then instead of returning a blank list, we'll return posts like that. So now all we need to do is make this create post function. So to do that, I'm actually going to put that inside of post. I just think it makes sense to put it there. And let's simply say post, create post. Let's take one record or one value or whatever you want to call it. And then inside of here, let's make that post. All right, so what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to make a map. I'm going to say map string dynamic, and we'll just call this attributes like that. It's going to be equal to a new map, so a new dictionary. And you'll see what I'm going to do in here. It's going to seem strange, but it will make sense in a second. So first I'm going to say author, and I'm just going to make that a blank string. Then I'm going to say users liked. I'm going to make that a blank string, or sorry, not a blank string, a blank list. And then I'm going to say body, and I'm going to make that a blank string. Essentially what I'm going to do is kind of just have a cleaner way of updating the things that I need. So we'll say, author starts off as blank, users liked starts off as a blank list, and the body starts off as blank. And then we're going to look through all of the different key value pairs in this record. And if any of them are any of these keys right here, then we will update what these values are, and then we'll make a new post using them. So pretty straightforward, but we're going to say record dot for each. I think for each will work. And then we're going to say key, comma, value, arrow function like that. And inside of here, you'll see why I've made the dictionary now, or the map. I'm going to say attributes, and I'm going to say attributes key equals value. So essentially what this is doing, and is there a reason why the semicolon expected to find a, is there a reason? Do I have too many of those? I don't know why it's expecting to find this. I'll have a look at that in 1 second. But essentially, all of this, right, is going to have, let's go back to the Firebase. It's going to have like author, Timrasika, body, hello. So the key will be author, the value will be Timrasika, the key will be body, the value will be hello. So I'll just use that same key, which we have right here, and set that equal to whatever the value is. Now, I don't know why that was saying we expected to find blank thing. Okay, I guess we can just leave that like that. That's fine for now. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to say post equals new post. And inside of here, we're going to say attributes. And the first thing that we need to pass, I believe, is the body, and then attributes. And then we want the author. And then what's the other positional argument that we need here? I actually don't think we need any other positional argument. So let me just look at post quickly, but we're making a new post, right? So if I go to post, which is actually just up here, we can see we actually take, the body and then the author. So let's swap those around. Oh, did we do that correctly? We did do that correctly. So body and author. And then what I'll do is I will say if attributes, and we'll say users liked. And actually, I'm thinking, I don't think I need to do what I was going to do. I'm actually just going to say that post dot users liked equals set dot from attributes users liked. And this is going to have to be new. So this might seem kind of confusing, but what this is doing is essentially saying, okay, this is a list, right? All this information we're getting from the database. We want that to be a set because we have a set stored here for users liked. So let's make a set from this list, which just takes this list and just actually makes a set of it and then store that in users liked. Then we can return the post like that. Okay, so that should be the create post method done. That should hopefully mean that if we go back to database, this should be working. Undefined named post, post. Why is that giving me the wrong name? Can we do post underscore? And I do post like that. Okay, let's just go var post equals that, and then expect it an identifier. Oh, sorry guys, this needs to be comma. Okay, so for some reason I've added this arrow function here, which just really messed things up for me. I just need to get rid of that arrow that was here. I was like, why is this not working? But it's because I had that arrow. So let's get rid of that and let's add our semicolons. And now all of this should actually be working to get all the messages. So now all we need to do is actually use this function. I know this has been a lot of code and a lot of stuff going on, but now we just have to use this and actually load it up. So let's now go to my homepage. And what we're going to do is inside of my homepage, we're actually going to load all of those posts when we load this up. Actually, I don't know if we're going to put it in here or if we're going to throw it somewhere else. We might actually do it inside of post lists. But let's have a look here. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this inside of my homepage. So let's go over there. And what we need to do is essentially load all of these messages whenever this homepage is loaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this function. I'm just going to call it update. I'm going to say void update messages like that. And what this will do is we will call get all posts like that. Is get all posts what I called it? I called it get all messages. Great. Let's call it get all posts. That makes more sense. So get all posts, and then I'm going to say dot then. And what that means is once this is done, so once get all posts actually loads, then we'll have a function which will take the posts. This will go to an arrow function, and inside of here, we're going to say this dot set state. And what we're going to do is set the state and change these posts right here to be equal to the posts that we have. So we'll say this dot posts equals posts. And I think that should actually be all that we need, assuming that all that is great. Okay, so I just fixed some of my semicolons and stuff. I think that's actually correct. And what that does obviously is set the state, so it will redraw any of the widgets below it that use any of this. So that means we will automatically refresh the messages every single time that we go in here. Now, what I'm gonna do as well is I'm gonna add another method. I'm gonna say void, and in here, I'm gonna call this one init state. I think we've used this before, but this is an override method. So I'm gonna say at override. And then what I'm going to do is go super dot set, no, sorry, not set state, super dot init state like that. And inside of here, I will call update. So update posts like that. And nope, update messages. Why am I calling this? This needs to be update posts, and that can be update posts. Okay, so I've just mangled all the names, but I changed this from update messages to update posts. Now I'm calling update posts. So essentially, whenever this page gets loaded, we will update, and we can manually update as well, but this just means right when this gets loaded, update all those messages, and that should be good to go for now. So let's actually load this app and see if this is working. It's a high likelihood that I've made a few mistakes here because this has been a lot of code that we've been writing, but let's take a look at it. All right, so the app is loaded. Let's sign in with Google, choose our account, and let's see what we get. And there we go. All of our posts actually load up immediately. So now I can like, unlike. So let's actually see if I like that. And then I go back and I can sign in with Google. There we go. We can see that that is liked. And that is exactly what I was going for. So let's add one more. Test message. So we have test message here. Now let's just make sure this is working because I'm not super confident. Sign in again. And there we go. It is popping up. All right. So that is, I think, pretty much all that I wanted to show us. So now we have the database set up. We have authentication working. We have messages. We have likes. We have text input. I've shown you guys a ton of stuff. And I may be ending the tutorial series here. If you guys comment enough and you bombard me, I might add some more episodes to this series depending on what you guys want. I'm thinking the only thing that would make sense now is to kind of associate comments with each of these posts and make it so when you click into them, you can kind of view them more in depth. But anyways, let me know if you want to see that. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this series. So if you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, I will see you again in another Flutter tutorial series or another video on this channel.